So the theory of today is, does this fairly innocuous looking plant here on your screen, the poaceae plant, have implications in increasing your penis size and girth, fundamentally? Oh, the things I research here on this channel. So this very innocent looking plant has some implications in this regard. How does it do this? Well, it's because of the grain, the cereal grain that is subsequently taken, the fruit, as it were, of the grass plant, sorghum. So sorghum has come to my attention in respects to its synthesization of DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Now, when we speak about dihydrotestosterone, we have to talk about its synthesization. But first, before I do that, I just want to go through the rationality, the reasoning, the nutritional value, content, and context in which this interesting grain operates in. So, very nutritious grain. It is gluten-free in its composition, rich in carbohydrates, proteins, fibers, very high in fibers, actually. Interestingly, in this point, well, not interestingly, but as a, let's say, a preface to whether or not you are choosing to include this and the delivery methods in which you choose to include sorghum in your diet, I would personally stay away from it in its raw form because it has been known to cause certain gut irritation due to the scientific and anecdotal research that I have collected in relation to the video that you are watching now. So more, what would you say, a less or gut healthier version, option for you, maybe in a tincture form. Tincture, always get that pronunciation not quite right in my estimation, or perhaps in capsule form. So the macronutrients are very, very strong: proteins, carbohydrates, fibers, vitamins, and minerals, particularly high in antioxidants. And we know antioxidants are very valuable in terms of our mitigation of inflammation in the body, and some of the precursors of that inflammation being, disease. At the start of most diseases actually has its roots in inflammation and, chronic diseases as well. So our first argument into leading towards this idea that it has androgen boosting implications, and especially its effect on dihydrotestosterone, is in 5-alpha reductase. Now, those of you first hearing of 5-alpha reductase, or maybe need a refresher on its, let's say, role in your body, it's an enzyme. It is a catalyst from free-base testosterone, which is the active component of testosterone in our body, not the bound version, in sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. You can see in this little diagram that I've procured here, you've got testosterone here on the left-hand side, 5-alpha reductase as the enzyme, the catalyst that transforms the testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, which is our most powerful androgen in the body, certainly. I know people have a very tenuous relationship with dihydrotestosterone, understandably, because of its effects on things like male pattern baldness. But I think a bald head, I know I'm growing my hair out right now, is very, there's certain women that dig it. There are certain women that dig it, certainly. Now, the study that I wanted to reference here is the study on the right-hand side, 5-alpha reductase type 1 inhibition. So this study wasn't directly controlling the metrics around DHT synthesization from the enzyme alpha reductase from sorghum. It was actually more an inhibition of 5-alpha reductase. So on the bottom of your screen here, you can see this graph. I know it might seem, or you can view it very, very small and maybe not in detail on your screen here, but I'll kind of pass out the important details. On the left-hand side, you've got the inhibition. So you've got things like finasteride there, which is a common use case for male pattern baldness, for those of you worried about the excess amounts of DHT in your body that are not giving you that, or not allowing you to procure your lovely locks. But on the right-hand side, very curiously, you can see the ingredients, the chemicals, the precursors, the kinds of things that are going to have a net positive on DHT. And I want to bring your attention, very, very small to see here, is the S bicolor. So sorghum bicolor and minus 54.72% on 5-alpha reductase. So if we want to inverse this and look at the net positive in terms of increasing 5-alpha reductase in our body, we have to consider sorghum as a very, very viable option in that regard. Speaking about dihydrotestosterone more specifically and its implications on male gene expression, is the preface to this video on your male member size. Now, my theory, my idea, my thought process that I'm grappling with at the moment it really stems from the origins of where we find sorghum throughout the globe. More specifically, we find sorghum has its roots in Africa. More specifically, in Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt are the areas where the researchers believe the grain was first harvested. When I did a post on this a couple of days ago, whenever I choose to put this video out, a lot of you were talking about its prevalence in India. We can see here that sorghum was imported to India during the first millennium BC, where it is still used to make things like dosa, thick porridge, with some of the meals that are local to that particular place. In relation to the male member size, I actually have a very interesting demographical composition here in relation to penis size, varying where you're born. You can see here the hotspots in dark blue. Australia, high up there. France number one. Croissants, frog legs, snail. I don't know. It's curious, but just mentioning some of those areas here, you can see quite a lot of hotspots here in Africa. Some not very big hotspots here. Pause, pardon the pun. But first and foremost, we have Ethiopia, I believe. Let me just zoom out here, make sure I'm right. Geography not being my strongest suit, but I believe this is Sudan here. We have the Congo here. We have Ethiopia on the right-hand side, just underneath and eastwards from the Sudan. Now, penis size, of course, is going to be a multifactorial equation. Most things are going to be a multifactorial equation. But I am again leaning into this idea that sorghum, there's definitely a relationship there, especially when you consider the implications on 5-alpha reductase and also DHT synthesization from that particular enzymatic process. I won't deny that my morbid curiosity is getting the better of me here and starting to look at some of the countries that indeed do have look at that. It's gone into detail in terms of erect girth, via inches, centimeters, length. Goodness gracious me, they have not. I'm curious to understand how this data was collected. Maybe interested is not the right word. But France, Netherlands, Ecuador, Belgium, where am I in terms of my lineage here? Sudan up there, Congo up there. There I am, Venezuela. Just wanted to make sure that for my own vain curiosity that I am among the top 10 or 15, whatever the case may be is. I've never had any personal complaints in that regard. Let's move on from this conversation here. Of course, one of the initial arguments is going to be after maturation. If you're watching this video at the ripe old age of 30, for example, is the inclusion of sorghum actually going to have an influence on increasing your member size? The data is out in that regard. I don't think a study has been done to the equivalent of that. I'd be interested to know if any of you have done your own personal studies in that regard. But it's interesting to denote this idea, this theory, this idea that relative to where you're born and relative to the foods and the nutrients that are available in your country and what you've been brought up with through the puberty period, and also considering the lineage of your ancestors and what kind of foods they were raised in, because food is going to have an influence on epigenetics, which just means above epigenetics. My always interesting idea with epigenetics, and you can't change your genes, is your genes are fundamentally predicated on what you experience or what you expose your body to as you grow. So even if you can't influence your genes now, and I know you do that, you'd want to do that for very selfish reasons, you can perhaps point your genes or upregulate your genes in a direction which is more favorable to your bloodline. And again, if your children are going to be upregulating genes that are favorable to heightened masculine, gene expression, equally that is going to have a net positive effect across multiple different generations on what kind of, what your genes are going to fundamentally express. But again, guys, member size is a vanity metric. We all know it's motion in the ocean fundamentally, don't we? It's not a particular field of research that I'm fundamentally too interested in that regard. I know I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on masculine gene expression, and I think, if there's some utility or interest or intrigue for anybody watching this, I will do my masculine civil duty in finding research evidence, be it scientific, be it anecdotal, that may help you in that regard. Do let me know. Maybe you can do that rather innocuously. It is interesting. Some ideas are particularly alarming. I mean, I've heard of things like jelqing before, which is a very interesting practice that actually has yielded some results relative to the very small amount of research I've done on that area in relation to increasing size. But I don't know. You tell me. Are these theories, are these facts? Speak soon.